Hello and welcome to the 8th Ulster GA webinar on the Coach Development Programme, Coaching the Skill of Working Off the Ball. This webinar is in association with O'Neill Sportswear. The presenters this evening are Anthony Harkin and Brenton Harpur. Anthony is a master tutor with the GA and has a vast coaching experience, most notably being a coach with a successful 1992 Donegal team. Brenton is also a master tutor with the GAA and has been heavily involved in coaching all over Ireland. Tonight's webinar is being recorded and will be accessible on the Ulster GAA YouTube page shortly. The chat box is available throughout the session if you have any questions or comments. I'll pass you now over to Anthony.
Hello everybody and welcome to the webinar on coaching off the ball. Maybe first of all I'd like to thank Oisín, Gareth, Tony and my own two daughters, Katrina and Aisling, for their help with this presentation, and to Brendan, who was taking the questions at the end and who also did a good bit of work on the presentation. As I said, this is the 8th webinar, and the one tonight is on coaching off the ball. A good coach will make players see where they can go and be rather than where and what they are. This is a view of Errigal Mountain in Donegal. The good coach is someone who can frame the why the player is doing something. Why is the player doing this particular thing? Why does it make us better? Why are we continue? It'll help us to continue to grow and improve. Coaching really is about relationships. It's about trust. Eugene McGee spoke about at one of the webinars there, not Eugene McGee, but Eugene Young spoke about getting the inches, the extra inches. We're all looking for the extra inches. I suppose a lot of teams in the past have done a lot of work on strength and conditioning, and nutrition has come into it. And I believe that there's a lot of potential in working off the ball. And I think we can gain feet instead of inches in this regard. If you consider that in a very important game, or in any game as such, a player's only on the ball for a very short period of time. So it's important to work off the ball when we don't have the ball, and even when we have the ball. John Wooden was a great coach in America, and I'm a great believer in his philosophy. A player who makes the team great is better than a great player. It's a team game we're playing, and our aim is to try and develop a good team to do the best that we can. We won't always win, but we should always try and develop a good team to be the best that we can be. John Wooden has a lot of good books that you could pick up and read, and even on the internet there are a lot of stuff of Wooden's. He lived to a ripe old age of his 90s, I think, when he passed away, and a lot of his work is in business as well as in sports coaching. Bill Walsh is another man who was very much involved in American football, and he wrote a book called The Score Takes Care of Itself, and if you had time, it'd be well worth a read as well. Right, the objectives for today's session are: reason we should consider coaching off the ball, working when in possession with some practical ideas, coaching players to receive a pass. This would be particularly useful to young coaches who work with younger players. I would be very much aware that we have a spectrum of coaches here who coach from inter-county possibly to under 10s, and ladies as well. So it's important to try and have something for everybody. Hope everybody will get something out of this. Learn ways to create space. Coaches often talk about players go out and create space, but do we ever teach them how to create space and what space is all about? Things to consider when out of possession, and some practical examples. And here are the reasons why we should coach off the ball. Most of our players are in possession for less than 2 minutes in a game. Now, I had a player in an All-Ireland final who had the ball in his hands for less than 3 seconds. And he had an outstanding game, and he also got an All-Star that year and deserved it. In an evenly matched game, we'll have the ball only 50% of the time. That's in an evenly matched game. Very often, a lot of games will not even have it for 50% of the time. So what are we doing for the rest of the time? If a player is on the ball, he might have it for 2 minutes if he's a good player. The rest of the time, What is he doing? So there are a lot of things that we can look at there. We need to teach our players how, when, and where to receive the ball. It's very important to get the ball in the right position. In the past, teams pass the ball around and put the ball into the corner. And if you put the ball into the corner, if you're attacking, it's very, very difficult to make much of it. The only team I seen that could really do it were in the 80s and 90s. Meath team, they used to bring the ball into the corner and then they get Colm O'Rourke to get on the ball, and they'd pull all their defenders to that side of the field, and then they'd switch the ball to the other side of the field, and you had somebody coming in on the blind side. Flynn usually to score a goal. And I remember the National League game when it wasn't a strict end to put on and off subs, you could put them on and off pretty much anywhere. I remember the ball going up along the side, our defence, our left side of our defence. And the next thing, Sean Boyle shoved on a sub and pulled off a player beside him, and the ball came flying across our defence, and we got caught ball watching and got a goal and won the game. We also need to coach our players how to lose a player and mark a player. I suppose in the past we've moved on quite a bit. Our earlier coaching was running around the field, as it were, and then we moved on to drills, and we're probably maybe doing too many drills, and there were very little coaching of the tackling going on. But in more recent times, coaches have become educated, and there's a lot of information on the internet and books and so on and so forth. And players are doing more now in relation to coaching, tackling, etc., etc. But now we need to move on to playing small-sided games, 7v7, 4v4, 3v3, and get the players thinking. That is the key, because no matter what you do, when the player goes across that white line, there's not much you can do as such. Our pitch size needs to be considered when attacking and defending. Now, our pitch size pretty much remains the same. But I'm talking about here is if you're coaching younger children, particularly younger children of 10s and 12s, make them spatially aware. I would do activities there of whatever your pitch size is, 20 by 30, whatever it is, get them to run around freely in that space and shout stop every now and again, and ask them, are you creating space? Are you as far away from everybody else as possible? And maybe introduce things like stand on one leg when I shout stop, or sit, or maybe lie, or back, or front. They're all things you could get shout at them, and when they stop, then whether they're sitting or they all spaced out around the place. So really, what we're doing here is we're developing spatial awareness, even at a very young age. At under 10s and under 12s, we can do this, and it gets it into their head what space is and how to use it. Very often teams don't use the pitch size that's available. Very often you see even in a 15-a-side game, full forward line starting 15, 20 metres out from the end line. And by the time they run and receive the ball, they're 40 or 50 yards from the goals, and there's really no threat. And the last reason we should do coaching off the ball is to develop thinking players. It's very important to develop thinking players, because when players cross the white line, as I say, it's very difficult. It's very difficult for us to make changes. We like to think we can make a lot of changes, but in reality, it doesn't happen. You might make a few switches here and there, and you might bring on a few subs. But it reminds me of the story of Eugene McGee when he was at a huge coaching conference a number of years ago. Man's dead now, but he coached Offaly to defeat Kerry in the 5-in-a-row team, and he was a few points behind in the second half, and he thought to himself, well, what am I going to do here? And then he thought, well, the only hope I have of winning this game is to keep Matt Connor close to the goals. But there's 70,000 people in Croke Park, and the noise and the din. Any of you have ever been there down in the sideline? It's very hard to get messages into players. So he thought to himself, I'll send in a messenger. I'll send one of the subs to tell him to tell Matt Connor to stay close to the goals. So he set Seamus Darby in, and Seamus Darby got a wonder goal and defeated Kerry. And they couldn't understand at this conference why this great coach Eugene McGee sent a messenger in and it won him the game. So we do need a certain amount of luck too when we're involved in football. It doesn't matter all the coaching you do on the ball and off the ball, you do need the element of luck as well. Here we have a drill to create space to give the right angles for players on the ball. You could have this in an area of 20 yards by 20 yards. We have five players on the outside. You could have 6 or 7 players on the outside. you have a triangle in the center with a defender in the center. Now, the idea is that that defender has to try and stop the passes going through the sides of the triangle. Now, the passes have to be below head height. They can be fist passes or foot passes, and preferably from player's chest to teammate's chest. And you'll see the players, as you look at the activity there, you'll see the players on the outside. They can pass the ball around the outside if they wish. There's no issue with that. But the whole aim of the activity is to run, to give a good angle to the person on the ball so you can give them a good clear pass. In other words, that the defender isn't in the way of the pass. I'll just play it here and we'll have a look at it. The players are moving around. They run to give a good angle for the pass. Two ran into position there. Two ran again wide to get a good angle for the pass. And you could have a number of these going on your pitch, teaching your players to run off the ball to give a good angle to the man on the ball. That's what it's all about. It makes so much life so much easier for the man on the ball. If you're coming out of defence, for example, and you have the ball in your hands, if you have two or three players running into space and doing different runs, it makes it so much easier for you to so many different options for you to pass the ball. Whereas if you have no options at all, you just carry it or hoof it, and the aim of the game is to be more constructive than that. We want to try and keep possession of the ball until we get a shot in goals if at all possible. So it's a very simple activity, triangle 5 yards apart, and players on the outside that can pass the ball around outside. And then this teaches players to give a good angle to the man on the ball, and that's the key. And then we can develop this into a game, a small-sided game, and then in the full match situation. So players are always running to try and make life easier for the person on the ball. Right, strategies for working off the ball. I'm a great believer in defending from the full forward line. I see a lot of teams giving possession to the opposition, but I'm a great believer in defending right from the full forward line, right back, because I know some statistics were done and some research was done in Croke Park a number of years ago there, and they found the team that defended in the full forward line were way more successful than any other teams. Try and force the ball down the wing. The reason that we force the ball down the wing is twofold. First of all, the sideline. We use the sideline. I would call the sideline as the 16th man. So the opposition can't take the ball back out over the sideline. If they do, they lose possession. And the other reason we force it down the wing is because they can only attack from that side. If a team brings the ball down the centre, they have the option to attack from both right and left. The other thing you can do, if your strategy you can do, and a lot of teams are doing it now, is they move players to a zone in a high percentage scoring area. So we'll look at this in a second with one of the slides. But teams move defenders inside the D, for example, to stop teams from scoring goals and stop teams from scoring shots from outside. Stop people from scoring from the high percentage scoring area. And we'll look at that in a second. Teach players to have peripheral vision. It's very important to, what I mean by this is that we're able to see from our right hand, if we put it out alongside our body, to our left hand. In other words, we have the full spectrum of 180 degrees and we have to be able to see that 180 degrees. Very often defenders tend to ball watch. And of course, as attackers, we can take advantage of that because we can move the ball and move the players, and as a result, then we might be able to get in on the blind side. The goalkeeper should be the conductor of the defence. He has the best view of the whole defence, and he should be able to call to his player by name, call midfielders back into position. He should be trying to keep a good balance in defence. That means that the opposition will not have too many forwards on one side of the pitch, so that if they move the ball to that side of the pitch, they will have an overload. They might have 5 against 2, for example. So it's up to the goalkeeper. He has the best view of the game as such. So he should be in control of that situation when we're off the ball there in defence. And again, good communication. You might shout man on, time. All the other players can also do this in a game situation. And I believe that good communication is the glue that holds the team together. And here's an example of a team here. It's Tyrone against Armagh in Croke Park. And as you can see, it's a defensive system which they've set up, Tyrone have set up. And they have, as you can count there, they have what, one, two, three, four, five players inside the D, including, and then the goalkeeper's extra. They have five round in a semicircle, and then they have a triangle facing the ball. A lot of teams have adapted this sort of defensive system in recent times. I suppose Jim McGuinness started it all off, and Jim was smart in that he looked at teams, and I looked at teams over the years, and I saw that the most successful teams were the teams that had a good defense. If you look at all the different sports. I mean, I did physical education, so I played netball, I played basketball, I played all sports, and I discovered by research and by looking at games that the most successful teams were the teams that had a very good defense. And here, Tyrone have set up a very good defence in this situation. Now, it's possible to beat this defence. And a number of questions came in how you would beat the defence, this type of defence. Personally, I would beat it with moving the ball quickly. Don't allow them to get time to get back in here. In other words, get the ball up the pitch quickly. Fast break situation in an organised way, not higgledy-piggledy. Have some sort of an organised system to get the ball up the pitch quickly. And if you do that, then you'll not have teams like this here set up so very well defensively. The other thing you can do is once they have that sort of setup, you can move players in and out. The whole objective of attacking a defensive system like this is the defenders, generally speaking, will react to two things. They react to the ball, and they also react to forwards moving. So you need forwards moving in and out all the time, and you need the ball moving around as well, as fast as you can move it, and if you can move from one side to the other. And maybe you have people darting through, but the key is here when people dart through, they dart out the other side and they come back out again. Very often teams, what they do is they run into the middle and they stay there, and the whole centre's all blocked up, and that's of little or no use to anybody. So if you want to beat the system, um, it's a basketball zone in effect, and if you want to beat it, probably the easiest way is to fast break, and to do that, you have to be able to have people that can kick the ball. And a lot of our coaches nowadays are doing a lot of activities where they fist pass the ball. Now, as a coach, first passing the ball is lovely and it's wonderful, and very little mistakes are made, and you look great as a coach. But really, I challenge the coaches now to use more foot passing, to teach your players to receive the ball. Sometimes you won't get that perfect pass. I'm always looking for a pass to chest. There are some coaches who say one bounce or better. Well, the way I look at it is pass to chest. Okay, if it goes one bounce, well, we'll have it. But we're aiming high, hoping to get what we're looking for. If you look for one bounce or better, it might be two bounces or three bounces. And if you're going to have that kind of a pass, then somebody's going to has an opportunity to steal it off you. So pass the ball to chest and kick the ball. And I would advise coaches to do a lot of kicking in their activities. I see drills and coaching sessions, and there's very little kicking activities. And I think it's very important to be able to kick the ball. I mean, if we look back, even scoring, most of our forwards nowadays, even at top under county level, a lot of them have to bring the ball in 30 yards before they'll shoot. There are a number of exceptions. But when I look back to even when I was a child listening to matches on the radio and so on and so forth, we had the Galway teams of the 60s where Pat Donnan was kicking the ball over from 65 yards. And the ball was a lot heavier in those days than it is now. So I think maybe we need to look at developing forwards who can kick the ball over the bar from a little further out. If they can do that, or if we can, a couple of players on a team can do that, that will pull the defence out and give us more opportunities maybe for breaking through the centre. Man marking an opponent. First of all, I'd say this picture here that I have in here is probably the worst picture I could have possibly put in, because McFadden Ferry there is standing behind his man, but and he should be in front. Anyway, first priority in defence is to win the ball. I mean, if we have the ball, we're in control of the game. So a lot of defenders, their first priority isn't that. I would always maintain the first priority in defence is to try and win the ball. The second thing I'd say is good footwork is essential. Now, when I talk about foot, and Brendan and myself talked about this, really the boxer stance, one foot in front of the other, is the way you need to be standing with your arms out wide. Um, That is key. So you can move backwards and forwards without tripping yourself up, and then you're nicely balanced, even have your knees slightly bent, and you're in that position where you can guide your opponent. If he has the ball, you can guide him towards the sideline, you can guide him onto his weak foot. There's lots of things you can do. Stand side by side, goal side. The key here is to have your arm in the passing lane to stop the ball. In this picture, his arm is out, but it's not. It's behind him. It should be in front of him. Because remember, very often the player is going to catch the ball chest high. So if you can get that ball, hand into that passing lane, then you have an opportunity to get the ball. The other thing you can do is, if you have your hand across his chest like that, is if the ball's coming between the two of you, you can push back with your arm and push yourself forward. So you're doing two things. You're moving yourself forward and you're moving your opponent backwards. Now, you're not going to win the ball all the time, so you have to be realistic. If a player gets the ball, try and delay him. Okay, try and delay him so you can get your teammates back to give you a hand in case he gets round you. So delay him in some small way. That might mean you might have to back off him if he's a real speedy forward and he's coming at you at speed. You might have to take 2 or 3 steps backward. He mightn't necessarily be expecting that. Give him the worst option or an angle towards the goals you can possibly give him. Push him out to the corner if possible. Push him onto his weak foot. Most players now know which foot's strong and weak and on the opposition, although a lot of coaching now has been done so that players are good in both feet. But all players have a weak foot, and most players have a preferred foot. So try and push him onto the weak foot if you can. Do not let him come down the centre. If an attacking player comes down the centre, as I said earlier, he's an option both right and left. So you don't want that. It's harder to defend against that if he's an option right and left. If he comes down one side, then the attack has to come from that side, so you have a better opportunity of getting the ball. Try to dispossess him on the toe tap and bounce. Tackle on the toe tap. Near hand tackle on the toe tap or the bounce if you can at all. Get the hand in, knock it away. And try and stop the pass or shot with a block. So really there are 4 key things there as a defender. First of all, try and stop him getting the ball by getting your hand in early and into the passing lane. Tackle the ball when it's been bounced. Near hand tackle when it's been bounced or toe tapped, and also get the block in or try and stop the pass or make the pass. Try and give him an option to pass the ball as poorly as possible when he's getting rid of the ball. They're the key things there about man marking an opponent. How many coaches work on receiving skills? I would hazard a guess not too many. I would have always worked on, receiving skills is half the job, delivering the ball is the other half. I suppose we as coaches probably have spent far, far too much time delivering the ball, and which it's important. Don't get me wrong, it's important, but we probably haven't spent enough time on players receiving the ball. Now, sometimes players will receive the ball at chest high. Sometimes they might have to roll on the ground to pick it up. You know, do we as coaches ever practice kicking the ball to players so that they've roll on the ground to pick it up? Brendan pointed this out earlier to me. I would have always done activities where players would hit the deck and get up and have to catch a high ball, have to catch a foot pass, have to catch a fist pass, maybe on their back, on their front, on their side, and so on and so forth. This gets players used to hitting the ground, getting back up. Remember, if a player hits the ground, doesn't get back up, it's 14 against 15. So you need your player to get back up fairly quickly off the ground again. Right, coaching players to receive a pass. This would be particularly relevant to especially underage boys or girls if you were coaching them. Focus on what happens before the ball arrives. What do they do before the ball arrives? If you're playing a small-sided game, um, uh, perhaps they could run a certain way. You might ask, well, what way can they run? Maybe you get them to think of letters of the alphabet. Run V's, run L's, run A's, run J's, run D's, just to get them thinking and moving a certain way. Okay? You have to focus on the connection between the deliverer and the receiver. That wavelength. You've got to develop that wavelength. Very often I see teams doing backs and forwards, and the half back line that's playing the match are marking the half forward line. Coaches don't realise that those half backs are the half backs on your team that are delivering the ball to the half forwards and delivering the ball to the full forward line. So you need to be building up wavelength. How many of us as coaches ever asked our players where did they want to receive the ball? How many of us ever asked the players, where do you want to receive the ball? Some players might want to receive it on their right, some on their left. Some players might want to receive it in front of goals. Some players might have a favourite spot on the pitch where they can kick points. They want to receive the ball there. So these are all things that we could think about when we're working with our players. If you're delivering a pass to a player, it needs to be well timed. That's key, because if the player is running off the ball, making V cuts or L cuts or J cuts or whatever, then you need to be hitting him with a pass as he's getting free from his teammate or his opponent. Sorry, the pass has to be well weighted. I see players sometimes in the man just running alongside him or just cutting across him, and he sends a fist pass and bores a hole in his chest with it. The ball has to be popped up if he's close by. So they need to weight the ball properly, whether it's whatever distance it is. Very often in kick passes, two players don't weight the ball properly. They weight it too lightly, and the ball hits the ground 2 or 3 times before it bounces up onto their chest. So the key here is to weight the ball so it'll land comfortably in their chest, whether that be a pop-up pass, whether it be a 30-yard pass or a 40-yard pass or whatever, and make sure the pass is accurate. Now, players will have a favourite side to pass to. Now, if you have two players running for the ball, a defender and an attacker, then you obviously play the ball to the outside of the attacker to give him the advantage. How many of us teach our players to signal for a pass? We need to signal where the ball's going. You don't necessarily have to tell the opposition where it's going, but you can point your finger, I want it there, or I want it behind me, or run towards the ball and point behind you. And your teammate will know where you want the ball. Another important thing is, particularly again with underage, is to make sure that you get into the line of flight of the ball. If the ball's coming towards you and it's coming, if you need to run in such a way that if you miss it with your fingers, it'll hit your chest and you'll run onto it and hopefully gather the ball at some stage, particularly with underage players. Another key thing is to go to meet the pass. I was at training last night and I saw a player standing, and this was a very fast player. He stood. Another much slower player ran in and went away with the ball, simply because he didn't go to meet the pass. He waited on it to come. And if you wait on the ball to come, it won't always be there for you. The other thing I'd say, especially again with younger players, is reach for the ball with the fingertips. I mean, if you're writing, you don't catch the pen or the pencil with your fist or your palm of your hand. You catch it with your fingertips. It's the same with the football. You have much more control with your fingertips. And teach younger players to use their fingertips to cushion the ball and to control it. When the ball is played to you, cushion the ball against your chest. If you stick out your chest and the ball comes to you, it'll bounce off your chest. So you've got to cushion the ball as it comes, withdraw your chest almost on a controlling surface at impact. And then when you do that, you must protect the ball. You can't go around, especially again with underage players, telling you have to protect the ball, put your elbows out, put the ball into your chest and put your elbows out to protect it. And move away with your head up. Okay? I would always coach my players to have their head up, but sometimes that isn't enough. You might have to tell your players and do activities with your players so that they're watching you or watching teammates, because they might have their head up, but they might have their eyes down. The key here is to play with your head up, but also to play with your eyes up. And the other thing I'd say about individuals receiving a pass, always have your hands in the ready position. If my hands are dangling down by my side, it takes a second or two for them to come up onto the chest position to catch the ball. I was lucky enough to play basketball with an American player one time, and I was playing the base. And if you did not have your hands at the chest, the ball often arrived to me and hit me in the chest. He was so good at delivering the pass to me that you had to have your hands ready to catch, just to close on the ball when it arrived. So I would teach all my players to have their hands in the ready position. When the ball comes, they're able to catch it. Right, defending as a team off the ball. We did look at this a little bit earlier on. Again, the first line of defence is the full forward line. I wouldn't give the ball to the opposition. Some coaches do. That's fair enough. Close down the space in the high percentage scoring area with 8 or 10 players. We had a look at that earlier on, maybe with 1 or 2 sweepers. guide the opposition. Good footwork to shoot from bad angles. Again, we spoke about that earlier. Force them down the sideline. Use the sideline. Maybe trap teams on the sideline. What's to prevent you? Because you have the sideline as the 16th man. And we can play the ball down along the side. And if you get 2 or 3 players over there very fast, then we can trap them there and maybe turn the ball over. Again, good communication from the goalkeeper is key, and indeed other people on the pitch. It's important to be able to talk to players. I'm a great believer in communication on the pitch. There is a lot of teams have communication, but it's negative communication given out to players and stuff. I would try and have a philosophy that if you're going to say something, it has to be positive. Good man, hard luck, try again. Unlucky with that shot. Uh, Time, man on. You have space. Give players the eyes in the back of the head when they're working. Remember, it's a team game. So if the other team score against us, it's the team that give away the score. So we've got to defend as a team. We have to attack as a team, and make sure we don't ball watch, particularly in defence, because if we ball watch, very often the other team will move the ball quickly and maybe move players, and it'll get us out of position and get them into position to get a score. Working off the ball as an individual with possession. Okay. First of all, you need to recognise where space is. Again, you can do that from an early age, from under 10s, 12s, up by doing these small-sided games that I spoke about. When recognize where space is and when pass is ready to be played. Okay. Connection through eye contact. Again, the same wavelength. You've got to be working together as a team. Again, this comes from playing together as a team over a period of time, training, going to coaching sessions, so on, so players know exactly where a player is going to be at a certain point, and so on and so forth. Take up a position blindside where the defender cannot see you and you can see the ball on the opponent. This is a very good ploy particularly for a forward. I remember marking Brian Mullins for years in college, and you'd be marking Brian. He was a midfielder, I was a midfielder, and you'd be marking Brian Mullins, and you'd be watching the ball, and you'd be behind next thing he would sneak around behind you, and you'd still see you'd be there, and then 2 seconds later he'd be up at the goals, and somebody would pass the ball into him and score a goal. And he did that quite frequently for Dublin, simply because he was behind the man he was marking, and 5 or 6 strides he was away, and he was gone. And you were left in no man's land, and he may be scoring a goal or a point. V-cuts are used when you want to get open for a pass. Okay, we spoke about letters earlier on. V-cut can be very good. Walk a defender a couple of meters, planting your foot, and then sprinting the opposite direction. The defender's reaction will not be quick enough to stop you receiving a pass if the ball's delivered at the right time. Again, you need to be on the same wavelength. When you see the defender going on the V-cut, you need to be able to give him an accurate, properly weighted pass when he's coming back off the V. Again, another letter, L cuts. The defender goes 4 or 5 steps towards the ball, plants his foot, maybe gives a nudge, and goes out to the wing to receive a pass. Again, with his hand up for a signal for a pass. Side to side, use arm in front of opponent to push you forward to receive the pass. It pushes you forward and it pushes your opponent backwards. And here again, maybe a little bit more detailed on the V-cut. Go towards the goal, bend your knee, turn on the ball of the foot and push outside. Shift the weight and take a long step with outside foot. And have your hand up as a target and go to meet the pass. Again, it's important to have your hand up as a target and signal. The signal for the pass. Right, working off the ball as an individual with possession. Again, deep cut. If you're playing against the zone, for example, you can have your players around if the zone's already set up and you're slow getting up the pitch. When the ball's played up the right hand side, the last man inside can deep cut right round across the goals back to the other side, or maybe one or two can go back round across the other side to give overload on the other side of the pitch, and then we work the ball to the other side of the pitch, and we have extra defenders as such. Remember, space is king, and I know skill is king, but space also is king here. So if you can get players to the other side of the pitch without the defense knowing it, you have an opportunity to attack from that side, and maybe you have overload and you have extra players. This is what your goalkeeper, if you're defending, your goalkeeper will be able to call it. The other thing I'd say about attack and defense, I'm doing both here tonight, working on both. I wouldn't coach both together. I'd coach attack for maybe a couple of sessions, and then I'd coach defense for a number of sessions. It's impossible to coach attack and defense at the one time because you're counteracting what you're doing one with the other. Again, create the correct angle for the pass and get into position for the tap down. So, for example, if I'm playing midfield, then I need somebody who's going to run to be in. If they see me going for the ball, they know I'm going to tap it down. That are running to be in the right position to collect the ball. I mean, there were players that played with me, and they were just like a basket when I went up for the ball because they knew they were going to get a tap. The ball was going to pop onto their hands. So I mean that's something you have to work on throughout the pitch in different stages. Maybe for the throw in, for example, you might have to work something where a player you might tap it down or you might go for a catch or whatever. But again, you have to have the right angle. The right angle is very important for the tap downs as well, to be in the right position and be at the right place at the right time. And you'll see from your players and your teams, there's some players that are absolutely brilliant at it. They're always in the right place at the right time because they're looking at the next step ahead. It's almost like snooker. They're looking at the next move. They're there before it actually happens. The other thing is to pull wide on the opposite side of attack to get outlet pass. So, for example, if the ball lands in your goalkeeper's hands uh, and it comes in from the left-hand side, then obviously if you put the ball out the left-hand side again, the opposition were very strong there. That's why the ball came in from that side. So I would advocate that the ball goes out the other side, which is the weaker side. But for you to do that, you need to have a midfielder or you need to have somebody who is smart enough that sees the ball landing in the goalie's hands and that he's gone almost before the goalie catches it. So he's in position to receive a kick pass to get the ball up the pitch again quickly. Now, very often this kick pass will be out towards the sideline because there'll be less players there, there'll be less traffic there. So then the key thing then is to get the ball back to the centre so that you have an option right and left. If you go up one wing, then you're easier to defend against. I mean, I'm all about percentages. So if you go up the middle, you can attack right, you can attack left. If you go up the right hand side, the only way you can attack really is in from the right hand side. There's no threat on the left hand side, and that makes it easier for the defenders to defend. Get free from set plays. You might have an example. For example, if you have a free from outside the scoring range, you might want to set up some sort of a system that they use quite frequently, and it still works very well. Is the free taker kicks the ball, somebody runs, makes a V cut, runs for the pass, the ball is played to him, it's played back to the kicker, and the kicker then is free. Um, that worked for many years, and then that kicker maybe would kick the ball over the bar. He might be within scoring range then at that stage. So it's important to get free from set plays. You might have situations where you have very, very acute sideline balls, and it's very difficult to get them over the bar. Then you might work out a set play for that. You might have somebody running into an angle or somebody running a decoy to pull defenders away a certain distance, and then you might pop the ball into the centre for a second or third man coming running through to get the ball and to pop it over the bar. Really, when you're attacking against defenders, you need to be attacked as much as possible between defenders and get them to move out of position. Do they react, as I say, to two things? They react to the ball moving and they react to players moving. Now I want to move on to how do we create space. Um, there's quite an amount of space on the Gaelic football field, and I believe it's not used to its full potential. If we want to get scores, then we need to open up the pitch, and to do that, we need to create space. And I know skill is king, but also space is also king when it comes to getting the scores. There are a number of different ways of creating space. Very often coaches tell players, "Oh, go out and create space," but they never teach them how to create space. They never teach them what are the different ways to create space. These are all important whether you're playing at a very high level, if you're playing at inter-county, senior inter-county level, or whether you're playing at underage level. And here are the 8 different ways that you use to create space. Okay. Width is pretty simple, straightforward in a sense. You stretch the players as wide as possible, okay, on your pitch, whether it's a small-sided game or where it's a full pitch. I played in a team one time years ago where a man played actually 2 yards out over the sideline. And the defender didn't know what to do. You can't do that now, of course, you have to stay on the pitch. But he was using the full width of the pitch. Okay. Now you can develop width. I will be showing you a small example towards the end of the presentation on of a grid area where you can teach width, but also you can teach it in small-sided games, 7v7, 8v8, 9v9, where you put one player out on the sideline. If it's red against blues, 2 reds out on the sideline, 1 on each side. And if blues are playing against you, they can have a blue man out on the sideline. They don't mark each other on the sideline. So the object of the game is continue full rules, but you just have one condition. The ball has to touch one sideline before you can get a score, or maybe you could have a condition that it has to touch both sidelines, one of your players on both sidelines, before you can attempt to score. This teaches the players to get the ball wide before they get it back in again. And if you have them 2 sides, then they'll have to get the ball out to the 2 men on the 2 sides before they can attempt to score. Now the people that are on the sideline can run up and down the full length of the sideline. The key here is that the player that kicks the ball or passes the ball to the man on the sideline, he replaces him and the man on the sideline comes back into the game. Because what tends to happen is to leave people out there and they're running up and down the sideline all day and they never get part of the game. So when you play the ball out to the man and it's wide, then he comes into the game and you take his place up and down the sideline. The other thing is depth. Now depth is a wee bit more difficult to understand. But again, you can play a small-sided game similar to what I talked about before, and this time put one player up on the end line and allow him to run from corner flag to corner flag. And the condition is that the ball has to go to that man to show depth before it can come back out again, and you can attempt to score. And the other team can have a man up on the other end line running from end line to end line. These can be small-sided games, 40 yards by 30 yards wide. But the key here is to get the ball to the end line. You're teaching them to use the full length of the pitch before they can actually get a score. The next thing is a change of direction. Again, if the ball's coming up the right-hand side, generally speaking, the defenders tend to watch that side. It'll be their left-hand side. They tend to sag towards that side. And if we can get the ball quickly to the other side of the pitch, we may have an opportunity to catch them out. Again, you can do this in a small-sided game. Run 2 sets of cones up the centre of the pitch, say 5 yards apart. So if the ball starts on the right-hand side, then it has to go to the left-hand side before they can attempt to score. And you can come up with lots of other ideas yourself. I'm just throwing out these ideas in small-sided games to you. Another way of creating space is crossover plays, where one player crosses in front of the defender and the other player, both players cross over, and either the players change the ball, or the same player might carry the ball on with them and get into space on the other side. Armagh used to do this, I remember, way back in the 90s very successfully. Their 2 wing backs used to change position for kickouts and just cross over, and both of them left space immediately to play the ball out their wing, and then a midfielder could run into it. And very often the wing back would go right across the pitch and he could pick up a kick out on the other side of the pitch. Again, you can do this. You can do these crossover plays. Again, small-sided game, 2 rows of cones up the pitch, and you can have it that the players have to cross these 2 sets of cones, and they can either pop the ball to the player crossing beside them, or they can carry the ball with them. Or sometimes you could a reverse pass. You could go one way and you could reverse the ball the other way, pop it to them as they're passing. So you're teaching them how to cross over the ball, and really what we're really trying to do here is we're trying to create space and put the defenders out of sync, as it were. The next thing we can do to create space is play the ball quickly. I'm a great believer in playing the ball quickly, but to play the ball quickly, you have to have a good deliverer of the ball and you have to have a good receiver. The fastest and the fittest player on your team, no matter who you are, is Mr. O'Neill the ball. And you need to move him quickly or her quickly from one player to the other. And to do that, you need to have players who can deliver good passes, but you also have to have players who can receive good passes. Now, sometimes I always like to pass the ball to chest. You might get it one bounce, that's okay, but I always aim high and the hope that I usually do get the higher one, but one bounce is acceptable also. And you need players running into the space to receive the ball. It's no point in them just standing there. They need to be moving to the ball. Because if they stand, they won't get the ball. The ball, somebody else will nip in and take it. It's very important to go to meet the ball. But as I say, very often coaches are afraid to do this because things go wrong, activities go wrong. Fist passing drills look wonderful and they look great, and you're a great coach, everything's going well. But I would ask coaches to take risks, things, use the foot pass to get the ball up the pitch. 3 kicks will get you up the pitch. Get up the pitch quickly, and it's very difficult for the other team to set up their zone. They may have some sort of a zone set up, but if you get it up the pitch quickly, it's more difficult for them. The other thing I'd say is first touch. That's another way of creating space. You see the skillful player there, they just touch the ball. They seem to have loads of time on the ball. And the reason that is because they are skillful. They can catch the ball cleanly and they move away quickly. And I would often do a game, a small-sided game, and I would call it first touch. And first touch really means first touch when I'm refereeing, because if a player catches the ball and it drops to the ground and comes back up again, that's 3 seconds. You know, the fastest man in the world can run 100 meters in 9 seconds. The average club player, he'll do 4 yards in 3 seconds. So you're in trouble right away. So if you want to keep out of trouble, you've got to concentrate and get the ball first time and move away. Very often too, in the game situation, when I'd be playing small first touch game, players would fumble the ball. You'd be surprised how many times a player goes to catch the ball and has to catch it twice to get control of it. This is really, I'm talking about high end now here, inter-county or top club here, where you'll be using this sort of activity. And if I started this game in a club, I'd know for a fact before I'd even started that I'd have about 5 fouls in the first 6 or 7 passes nearly, because players are not sharp enough on the first touch. But after a short period of time, when you're playing it for a little while, players soon zone in and they get sharper. And then they bring that into the game then, and that makes them better players in the game because they're not fumbling and footering with the ball. They're moving it on at the earliest opportunity. Another way of creating space is disguise. We all remember Owen Mulligan and the 2 dummies he showed the Dublin defence in scoring a wonder goal in Croke Park. And I mean, you can see it on YouTube there. And I didn't put any video on this because it makes it easier for people that wouldn't have good internet. Killian O'Connor is another excellent man at disguise. He can. I seen him throwing 2 wonderful dummies in a match away out the pitch and kicked a wonderful point with his foot. Disguise is very, very important, and we need to teach this, and we can do it quite easily. I mean, we can run drills of 3v3 in a line and run out, and you have to dummy to the right, and then you have to kick with your left foot across the far line, and the other one coming back has to do the opposite way. I mean, we rarely teach disguise in the game, and it is a wonderful skill. I mean, even if you look at the goal scored against Donegal the weekend there by the Monaghan forward, he fooled the goalkeeper and one of the defenders there, and he created the space and he kicks it into an empty net. So it is a valuable skill, and it's great to be able to create the space with it. And finally, beat a player. If you can beat a player, generally speaking, you can create space up the pitch, because you get up the pitch and you get past one player, then generally speaking, there isn't another player for at least 5 or 6 yards. So you are creating some space and doing that. Here we have an example of a Gaelic pitch whereby you have two 15s on it there. It's just a graphic, and I'm just trying to illustrate to you about depth and width and so on and so on. Now, depth, what we mean is that the depth is between 10 and 13. Now, the oval shapes is the depth, and between 11 and 14s is the depth, and between 12 and 15 is the depth. Okay. Um, it's very important to have that. I remember looking at an Ulster final, under 21 final, a number of years. I think it was Donegal and Tyrone were playing in it. Donegal were playing against the Wind, and their nearest forward to the goal was their nearest forward to the goal was actually on the midfield line for the throw in. I mean, when the ball went up to him, he had no hope. Like, he had an absolute hope because he had the full half of the pitch to carry the ball with him. So it's very important to have depth, even if you're playing against a strong one. To have one or two players up at least, rather than have everybody down the pitch. Um, and try and keep the depth as much as possible. Depth is also important in defence, of course, because if you have a line of defenders all across in a straight line and somebody pops a ball over the top, then you could be in trouble. So you need to have balance. And again, the goalkeeper has a key role there in playing, telling his players to keep the depth, make sure that you're not caught in the one line across the pitch and the ball goes over the top. The rectangles there are the width. 10 and 13 are out in the sideline, and it's hard to get players to come out to the sideline to play on that. But very often players play in on the inside end of those rectangles there, and they're really losing valuable yards of the pitch. And what you're really doing is you're bringing defenders into the centre. And really, how many players, I often tell teams, how many players do we need to score? And really, the answer is we only need one to score. And if we run into the middle, then we're bringing a defender with us. We're bringing our own body in there, which is blocking up the space. We're bringing a defender with it, which is blocking up the space. And if you must go in, then you must also run out, run in and run out, run in and run out. That way, it keeps the space open, because as an attacking team, we need to create the space to get the scores. And if everybody runs in, our own men are in the way as much as the opposition. So you need to get in there and get out again, especially if you're playing against a zone like the one we looked at in Tyrone. You need to have men darting into the centre, darting back out again, darting in again, play the ball around. The key is to lots of movement, move the ball and move the players to keep the defence on their toes. Right, here we have another example of, I spoke about width before. We have four cones here. Now you could have a whole pitch done in cones. You could have it requires four players. You could have 5 or 6 or 8 or 10 or 20 cones around or 20 grids around the place, and they could be all working very closely together. Now what we have here is we have four cones. The aim of this game is to pass the ball along the side of the grid. You have to pass below head height. The man in the middle is trying to get the ball. If he does get the ball, he will replace the player on the outside. Now the three players is working together as a team. If they put the ball on the ground, then they have got to go into the middle. If they put the ball out of the square, they have to go into the middle. So they are learning lots of things here, especially for underage here now. They're learning how to weight the ball properly so it reaches their chest comfortably. They have to send crisp fist passes, because if they don't, the man in the middle is going to get the ball. And lastly, they have to run to create space for the man. At the moment, the man at the top of your screen there can pass the ball along the top, or he can pass along the side. Okay, but you'll see in a minute when the ball moves that the other player on the other side of the square or the grid, he has to move to give him a good angle. So when he moves, what he's doing is he's creating width for the person on the ball. Okay, he's creating width. He's also creating a good angle for the person on the ball, so he can run into position. And this happens all the time in a game. And I mean, this is just a small-sided activity that you could use. You could use this with adults as well, but because you're teaching them, and they can work really hard in this activity. And the aim of the game is to try and get to 10 passes without the man in the middle getting the ball. And if the three on the outside work really hard, then they can get to 10. If the man in the middle works really hard too, he can intercept them. Right, let's run it here and see how it works. See, the man at the bottom has to run to give him the angle. See? You have to run to the angle to give a good angle. You have to run to the corner to give the man on the ball a good angle. And the ball doesn't have to go to the same player all the time. You can go over and back between two players. It's very difficult for the man in the middle to get the ball if they're playing the ball quickly, if they're running wide, and if they're creating the space. And that's a small example of width, and it's also a small example of weighting the ball properly, because if they hit the ball too hard, it goes out of the square. Um, and if they don't weight the ball properly to reach his chest comfortably, it hits the ground, so they have to replace the man in the middle. And nobody likes to be in the middle too much, so it's a challenge for them, and they often rise to the challenge, I have to say, and they enjoy it. It's a game as such. Players love to be playing small-sided games, whether it's this or seven-a-side or whatever. They enjoy playing the games, and that's what we want to do. We want to give them as much enjoyment as possible. Right, and just to sum up, Eugene Young spoke at one of the seminars before about getting inches. We're all looking for these extra inches in our teams. Okay, but and I suppose strength and conditioning give us some extra inches with some teams and nutrition. But I believe that working off the ball will give us feet, not inches, if we spend enough time at it. Work on the ball when in possession. It's very important to work on the ball when in possession. Try and get players free. Run systems, get players, run letters, whatever, with underage. Get players thinking about where I could be to get the ball. Where's the best place I could be, so when I get the ball, I can score. And another thing I'd say here in this instance is we should think of our players should always have the triple threat. Okay. Now, what I mean by that is when you get the ball as a forward, your first threat should be to score. You should be in the position when you get the ball that you can turn and score with your right foot or your left foot, whatever it is. So you should figure out before you start at all. So when I get the ball in this position, my first threat is to be able to score. My second threat should be that I'm able to give a good pass to somebody else that maybe can score. And my final threat should be I can take a man on. I can take a man on and go past him. So that triple threat should be in your mind as a forward. Every time you get the ball, your first thing should be think, can I score from here? And if you can, shoot. Because if you don't shoot, you won't score. And really, at the end of the day, the aim of the game is to be ahead when the referee blows the final whistle. It's not to be ahead at the start of the game or the middle of the game. It doesn't matter who's won and end, but it does matter who's ahead when the referee blows the final whistle. So I'd say there, when in possession, think of the triple threat. Think of first of all, especially as a forward, the first option would be to score, be in a position when you get the ball, I can score, or else I can be in a good position to pass, or thirdly, I can be in a position to beat a man. Another thing that can often happen when you get a ball in possession in the forward line, you often have your back to goals. Now, to me, you're at a disadvantage if that's the case. So when you win the ball, you should immediately spin around and face the goals. Because when you face the goals, you have a lot more options. You can see what's happening ahead of you. Um, and you might be able to get the shot off. You might be able to get the vital pass off. Or you might be able to beat that man. Or the other option is if you're in the forward line and you win possession, pop it to somebody running off the shoulder. Because they have a much better view of the goals than you have. The man looking up, looking at the goals, has a much better view. Coach went out of possession. Remember, success is built in defence, in my experience. I've looked at different sports. Um, I played a lot of sports myself. I suppose I played many games, and I took from a lot of the games. Nowadays, there's a lot of information on the internet and stuff about coaching and so on and so forth. In my time, there wasn't as much as that, but I did look at the top parts of the world at that time, the All Blacks and the Australian Coaching Federation, and they had a lot of really good stuff on coaching. So you learn from all these things. But in my experience, if you have a good defence, I mean, it doesn't matter whether it's soccer or rugby or anything, you need a good defence, because if you have a good defence, it's a good part of the way to being successful. Learn all the ways to create space and start them at a very young age, from under 10s, under 12s, and build them up from there. And space is so vital, and it's something that they have to be ingrained and nearly think about it without being told about it when they get to senior level. And finally, develop thinking players by asking open questions. When you stop a small-sided game, ask them, well, how could we improve this? What? And very often, instead of one coach, you'll have 10 or 12 coaches. Very often, the young players and even older players will come up with many good ideas and give you many good ideas and tell you what's wrong with the game or what they did wrong there. That way, it will ingrain the activity or the thing that they got wrong. They'll not do it again. Whereas if you go in and tell them, they'll very often forget about it. But when you start asking open questions, they have to think about it. And when they're thinking about it, they're learning a lot more about the game. The other thing I'd say is when you're doing activities, lots of different activities, tell players why you're doing a particular thing. If you're doing a particular drill or an activity or a small-sided game, give the reasons why you're doing it, because it gives them a greater insight into the game, and it gives them a greater understanding, and they will embrace it that much more. Okay, I think we're on to the questions. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you got one or two nuggets out of that. Much of it you'll have heard before, I'm sure, but if you go away with one or two thoughts and maybe it'll improve your own coaching, that'll be wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll take the questions. I'm hearing an echo here, Oisin, for some reason. No way that is. All right. I know some people identified there they can't get through in the chat. If you want to put up your hand or switch on your mic to ask a question, we'll take that. We have a number of questions which came in advance, and Anthony actually has addressed a number of them, but I'll just quickly go through them and just make reference to them. But some of them are very good questions, and we just want to highlight those. One of the first was the Jurgen Klopp Gegan press. What relationship does that, or how can we apply that in Gaelic football? Well, I think we've been doing that for a long time. A lot of coaches are doing that. And as Anthony says, your first line of attack is the full forward line. Because we always say if you lose the ball, you're a defender no matter where you are on the field. And so we've been doing that, and we should coach that. Convincing the player that he's effective by working off the ball, how do you get them to do that? I think one thing is, first of all, if you could get video clips of star players who do a lot of running off the ball. There's loads of examples of that, and usually players are mentioned in the headlines because they score, but people forget that all this work that other players do off the ball. And often when I'm analysing a game, I always look for who the playmaker is, and the playmaker is key, because the playmaker is the person who sets everything up. He reads it and he acts as the chain. He's usually around a centre half forward, but it can be in any position in the field. If we can see that, if you can pick out guys like that who are playmakers, you'll see them make a lot of runs off the ball to create the space. And if you could show them that. The second thing is if you could video your own players and show them that, and because if you don't recognise what they're doing, if you can't, they won't repeat it. So what you need to say, you did that, you made that run. Even when you're on the line, just able to say that was a good run, even though he may not have got the ball, but he drew a defender. But we have to reinforce that by recognising it. How do you get the players to see the next play? Well, Anthony talked about that in terms of playing not just with your head up, with your eye up. So build activities into your training where you know that they've got their head up and that they can actually see something and they react to that stimulus. Advice for underage training. Well, Anthony's done a lot of mentioning there, so I'm not going to that. How to make it a habit. So again, it's about practice. We need to keep repeating it. You're just doing it once. You need to be repeating it and reinforcing it and repeating it. So often we just practice it once or twice and then we give up. We have to keep sometimes just repeating it to get the habit formed. Someone asked about ball work versus some ball work. Well, look, the more you can get the ball into the game, as Anthony made the point there, skills is going to be key. You're only 2 minutes on the ball in the game, no matter how good a player you are. So those 2 minutes become vital. You need to be able to do the right thing with the ball. So you need plenty of access to the ball as much as you can in training. Now, the other thing is saying, if sessions become boring, if you're doing these sorts of routines, any routine is boring if it lasts longer than 15 minutes. So we need to be aware to let it go. The other thing is even to recognise the coach when the players switch off. You may be only going 5 or 6 minutes and you realise they're not clued in here. Maybe I just need to switch it here. So you need to be tuned into that you're just not a slave to your program. Talking about players who are who've got good concentration and can read the game, and about the issue of players who watch games. A lot of players don't actually watch games because they're playing, so they don't really match. They might watch the county match. If you could encourage them to actually go, and I always say, if you can go get them, particularly to go to Grove Park, or if they do go to somewhere in a stand, get as high a position as possible and look down in the game, and then you start to see the movement of the ball. And that's the sort of things you could encourage players to do. Because they need to start to study the game, and because they won't learn unless they see that. Now, what else was here? A player. So let me just. What else came in here? I think that's most of them that have come in. Yeah. All right. Anybody else want to ask a question? You can switch on your mic. If you can't type it in, that's okay. Oh, I see one here. Liam, good defence. Will you be taken to Declan Bonner? Were you? Oh, he's asking this for you, Anthony. Were you down to Declan Bonner with Donegal's performance last week? Do you feel there are too many forwards in Donegal's defence currently? That's for you, Anthony.
Well, look, I mean, they conceded 4 goals the last day, but they still managed to get a draw. So you must look at the positives all the time. And they did concede 4 goals, I think. It was against Mayo the time before that, so it's quite a number of years. But I think it was a good time to concede them, and he'll certainly have learned. I'm sure he'll have learned his lesson, and the players will have learned, from their mistakes. And to be fair, you have to give credit to Monaghan. They played very well, and they had great pace in the forward line. But if you concede 4 goals, you rarely ever win a game. That's the reality. But to get a draw was very satisfying, considering they scored 118. And actually the football generally has been very good. There's been a lot of scores. It's been great to watch because there are a lot of scores. But come championship time, I don't think there'll be many goals going on in any team. I think they generally speaking they close up the defence when the championship comes.
Yeah, it's interesting you were mentioning Brian Mullins earlier, because I remember having Brian Mullins on a coaching course, and he was giving one in Dublin many years ago, and he used to always say, it doesn't matter what you score concede at the back, as long as you score one more than the opposition. That's all that matters. So sometimes we get ultra defensive and forget that the game is about scoring at the end of the day. Anyone else want to ask a question? If you can't type it in, you can switch on your mic and ask. Here's someone else here, sorry. Okay, here, Vincent. How much time do you spend in sessions to do the space awareness we talk about? Creating habits, so maybe every session. So if you were breaking down your session, how would you plan the session? The plan you said, meaning you would do this in every session. Maybe give us a planned session over 75 minutes to incorporate this. Yeah, I think Vincent, maybe if Anthony wants to come in this, but my feeling about that is, try and maybe have a theme. You can have a theme in your session. If you say, well, my theme, is about creating space or awareness, so the players, as Anthony mentioned, it's important to tell players in advance what your session is about. Tonight we're going to focus, and so you're saying everything we're going to do is going to be focused about, creating awareness. So they understand why you're doing certain things. But I would say any activity shouldn't last any longer than 15 minutes, even if it's just to break it, to review it. So one of the things I would be also encouraging when you're running sessions is freezing. That often players don't understand what you're talking about, being in the wrong position or not in the best position. If you just say to them, okay, when I blow the whistle, I want everybody freeze where you are, and then just say, have a look where you all are. What options is on for you? If you looked up now, what would the option be? So things like that you can do. So over the session, I would say, Vincent, you can, if you were, I would go for themes, but I would also break it up. I'd either have a change or a review of what I like Anthony. I would stop the players and say, how do you think it's going? What do you think is going well? What's working? What do we need to improve on? Avoid telling players, as Anthony says, because if they don't think for themselves, you start telling them. You can give them hints, but try and get them so you could use your session like that. Do you want to come in that, Anthony?
Well, I wouldn't have the full session on it, but as you say, I would have a theme, or I would have something. I'd have some sort of target to aim for on a particular night, and I do maybe the spatial awareness and the small-sided games, and again ask the open questions. For example, when you're working with width or depth, you could do the two of those together and get players to be aware of the space. Now, sometimes you might have a very tight, you could even make the pitch much smaller just to make them aware of how little space they have when they all cramming on top of each other. But the whole idea is I'd mainly do it in small-sided games. You might use some activities. I give a couple of examples there of two activities you could use of outside the game situation and then bring it into the game. Like, for example, you could use that drill that I was using there of 3v1. And then you could bring that into the game and maybe have people running along the sideline, or you could have a certain channel along the sideline that they run on, and it's built up over a season or over a number of seasons. Really, if you're working with an underage team, you build it up over a number of seasons, and you have a theme each night, and you work. It'll be part of your theme. You'll be doing so much work on the ball. You'll be doing so much work off the ball. But I feel not enough coaches work off the ball. We need to do more work off the ball. That's where more of the inches can be gained to improve our players, I feel.
I just see a couple of other questions came in. Prior was, how do we deal with creating movement in a crowded defence? I think that you've already touched on, Anthony. You're talking about guys, need to dart in and dart out.
Yes.
And so you say they'll follow the player, they follow the ball. So that's really what you're talking about there. The other one was, how do you get a player to fully believe? Well, we talked about that. Yes, I've already addressed that one. Any other questions? Anybody wants to? If you can't get text in, you can switch on your mic and ask it. Otherwise, we're well over time at this stage. You have one here, Liam. Okay. Oh, thanks, Liam. Okay. All right. Anyone else? Okay, that seems to be it. Anthony, I'll leave the last word to you there.
Okay, all I'll say is thank you all for attending, and I know some people have this, and over 200 people have booked this session, so some people will be watching this in a recording, and I hope you'll all have got something from it. And just to thank all the coaches for all their hard work. There are a lot of coaches doing a lot of work around the whole country, and they get very little thanks for it. And just to thank them all for their hard work. They're keeping a lot of people busy, and the clubs all over the country. And it's great to see it. I see in our own club there, we have 5 or 6 coaches out most nights there working with young people. And it's a credit to you all the work you're doing with young people. And I hope that you've got 1 or 2 things out of my session that will be of benefit to you in the future.